This podcast is sponsored by ScienceBasedLearning.com. Discover your passion for languages with our innovative ebook, audiobook, and video system. Maximize retention using spaced repetition. Start your journey today.
Translation's role in effective adult language acquisition. Explore how translation enhances adult language learning and supports language acquisition within the science of language learning. Translation's effectiveness in language. Pedagogy, a practical look for adult language learners. When it comes to how to learn a language, translation often evokes mixed feelings among language educators and learners alike. Traditional language teaching methods either champion translation as a useful bridge or dismiss it as a crutch best avoided to foster immersive learning. But what does the science of language learning say about the role of translation in language pedagogy? And more importantly, how can adult language learners leverage translation effectively in their journey of language acquisition? In this post, we'll explore the effectiveness of translation in language learning, balance common perspectives, and share practical tips on using translation as a tool rather than a shortcut. Why translation has a bad rap in language learning. For many years, immersion and the direct method dominated language teaching philosophies. The idea was to avoid learners relying on their native language and instead encourage thinking directly in the new language. This approach discouraged translating because it was believed that constantly translating slowed down fluency development and interfered with natural language acquisition. In classrooms that strictly avoided translation, errors sometimes increased as learners tried to guess meanings without context, leading to frustration. The argument against translation is that over-reliance can cause learners to stall at the word-for-word phase instead of developing an intuitive feel for the new language's grammar and usages. The case for translation in adult language learning. While translation might not be the primary focus for all learners, adults actually have certain cognitive advantages that can make translation a helpful strategy. Metalinguistic awareness. Adults often have a better understanding of linguistic structures and can use translation to compare grammar and syntax between their native and target languages. Vocabulary building. Translation explicitly links new words to known concepts, which can speed up retention. Contextual clarity. Some complex meanings, idioms, and cultural nuances are easier to grasp when you can reference your native language. So using translation as a deliberate part of your language learning strategy can prevent misunderstandings and reinforce learning when done thoughtfully. Translation as a scaffold, not a crutch. The key to effective use of translation in language pedagogy is moderation and intention. Rather than translating every sentence or phrase, here are some ways to make it work. Pre-translation preview. Before tackling a new text or dialogue, skim it and translate difficult words or phrases to create a mental framework. Compare and contrast. After reading or listening, try to translate the content back into your native language and then check with the original to notice what changes and why. Check comprehension. If you're unsure about a word or structure, translate it for clarity, but then practice using the word or phrase in context to internalize it. Use translation for cultural notes. Sometimes literal translation doesn't work, but exploring why can deepen your cultural and linguistic understanding. When approached this way, translation becomes a powerful tool that supports the development of intuitive language skills instead of hindering them. Science behind using translation in language acquisition. Modern research in the science of language learning recognizes that language acquisition doesn't happen in isolation from the learner's native tongue, especially for adult learners. Cognitive science shows that linking new language knowledge to existing language frameworks accelerates memory and recall. This is where principles like spaced repetition become crucial. By periodically revisiting vocabulary and structures paired with their native language translations, learners reinforce memory pathways, making knowledge stick better. Understanding that translation is part of the cognitive puzzle helps learners optimize study methods rather than feeling guilty about always translating. In fact, a balanced method that includes translation, immersion, speaking, and listening tends to yield better results for adults compared to strict avoidance of native language usage. Practical tips for adult language learners using translation. Use bilingual materials. Books, articles, and apps offering side-by-side translations can help you understand subtle differences and make connections. Practice self-translation. Try writing or speaking sentences first in your native language, then translate them into the target language. Leverage and technology. Use tools like online dictionaries with example sentences and pronunciation guides to support your translations anytime. Blend translation with immersive practice. After translating, listen or read the target language content multiple times without translation to train your brain to process it directly. Enhancing your language learning with science-based tools. If you want a language learning system that respects the science behind language retention and acquisition, consider checking out sciencebasedlearning.com. They offer a simple ebook, audiobook, and video language learning system combined with an online practice app that uses the science behind spaced repetition to maximize your learning and retention. By combining practical translation strategies with proven learning techniques like spaced repetition, tools like this can provide the balanced approach that adult language learners need. Final thoughts. Translation is often misunderstood in language education. For adult learners especially, it can be a highly effective tool when used purposefully and in combination with other learning methods. Embracing translation as part of your toolkit allows you to build bridges between your native language and the new language, accelerate vocabulary learning, and deepen your cultural understanding. Ultimately, effective language acquisition involves recognizing your unique learning style and using a blend of strategies, including translation, immersion, and practice. So don't shy away from translation, use it smartly, and you'll find your path to fluency becoming much clearer. Remember, consistent practice with tools that align with the science of language learning can make a big difference. If you're curious about effective science-backed ways to learn a new language, check out sciencebasedlearning.com and take your adult language learning experience to new heights.